I was approximately 10 years old, which would make it about 1983, and on vacation with my parents at Lake Nacimiento in California. I was accompanied by my 2 older brothers, my sister, my father and mother, and my father's brother and his girlfriend. We had spent the day fishing on the lake in my father's boat. Needless to say, I think we only caught 1 fish between all of us. We had returned to our campsite for dinner and some conversation. I think we played cards that night as well. It was getting late into the evening and we all decided to go to bed. My parents would sleep in their tent, and my uncle and his girlfriend had a tent of their own as well. As for the kids, my father owned a pop-up trailer for the 4 of us to stay in. The interior of the pop-up had 3 places to sleep. 2 people could sleep in the center, and 2 on each side in the pull-out bunks. Well, we all went in for the night. I would sleep on the left bunk as I had the previous night. This is where it gets weird. I remember waking up very late in the night, everyone else was still asleep, and having to go to the bathroom. Now, in order for me to get to the door, to go out to the bathroom, I would have to climb over the 2 people sleeping in the center of the trailer, my oldest brother and sister. Well, not tonight I wouldn't. I remember standing up in my bed and stepping forward, expecting to step down onto the mattress that my sister and brother were sound asleep on. I had planned on just hopping over them and getting out to pee, but it didn't work that way. What I mean is, I didn't step down, I just sort of hovered, but it didn't register in my mind. I was expecting to step on something soft under my foot, and that's about what it felt like. So I took another step and then another until I reached the edge of the bed. It wasn't until I stepped off the bed and didn't go down to the floor that I realized that I was floating in the air. It didn't feel like anything was holding me up, but more like there just wasn't any gravity. I could look down and see the floor, about 2 feet below me. So, like any other 10-year-old, I panicked and fell to the floor. I wasn't hurt, but it woke everyone up in the trailer. My oldest brother was the only one who thought something strange was going on. He asked me how I got over his bed without waking him up. I tried to tell them what just happened, but none of them would believe me. They all thought I had jumped over the bed. That's why I was on the floor. That was the only time I can remember when gravity stopped for me. I would be interested to hear from anyone else that this has happened to. About 2 years ago in the summer, I was visiting my aunt and uncle in a town about 90 miles away from my home in Belfast, Ireland. My aunt's town is called Enniskillen, and it's the sort of place where everyone knows everyone else's business. Anyway, I had met a guy there who was 18, the same age as me. His name was Brian, and he worked in a large hotel which was situated in the countryside next to Lough Erne, quite a large lake. The hotel was an old manor house which had been converted in the 1960s. Due to this, it had many storage rooms at the top of the building, into which very few staff went. Myself and Brian, along with my cousin Cara and her boyfriend Kevin, decided to make use of these rooms as young people do and bring up a few bottles of beer and a CD player, etc. We spent quite a few nights enjoying each other's company, talking and sharing stories, when one night the conversation took a turn to the supernatural. All of us being raised as Roman Catholics, we all strongly believed in the afterlife and knew it was a dangerous thing to mess with Ouija boards and anything like that. If you're caught doing it in school, remember, we have strict Catholic schools here. You can face suspension or even expulsion. The next night, Kevin decided he should bring a Ouija board belonging to his friend up to our storeroom. Cara was adamant that she wouldn't go near the thing, and so was I, until a few cans of Miller and a persuasive boyfriend convinced me that it might be fun. I did believe that something bad could happen, but I thought we would only be kidding around and we would stop before anything really serious happened. Brian, Kevin and I played with the board, talking to various spirits, and most of them seemed harmless, while Kara was still dead set on not taking part in our activities. It was quite a hot summer, especially for Ireland, and we spent the days out by the lake and speeding around in Brian's car. One day, we were in the car sharing some chips, fries for you Americans, with the windows open in the car and the music blaring. All of a sudden, the sun went behind a cloud and it began to rain almost immediately. We thought this was weird, so we rolled up the windows and carried on chatting. The weather got worse and worse, so Brian decided we should head for home, which was about 3 miles away. As he said this, I became aware of Kara next to me, who was shivering, as if she was really cold. I turned around to ask if she wanted my coat or something, and her eyes were rolling about, and she was drooling at the mouth. She seemed to be having a seizure, and I was really worried about her safety. Brian looked panicked and tried to start the car, but it wouldn't start. The car was new, as he'd gotten it as a gift from his parent for his 18th birthday. We then became aware of a person walking towards the car. The figure was slightly hunched over, and their pace quickened as they approached the vehicle. I realized that the figure was actually an old woman with the ugliest face I have ever witnessed, and long strands of mucky grey hair matted to her face by the rain. She seemed so real, and I became quite terrified. The car still wouldn't start, and I began to cry. I could see tears in the lad's eyes as well, and Kara was on the verge of passing out from her fit. The woman pressed her nose up against the glass of the window, and I swear on my life she became transparent all of a sudden, and it was possible to see the rain behind her. She began to put her hand on the glass, and it came right through. The glass stayed intact, and I thought I was going to pass out myself. I began to say the Lord's Prayer, and the woman looked at me with such disgust that I said it even louder, which seemed to persuade her to retreat back from the window. Brian managed to get the car started, and the second we did, the woman disappeared, and Kara became instantly better. The sun shone once more, and the rain stopped. We sped off, but about 2.5 miles back towards town, we got a flat tire. Lucky to be alive, we brought the car back to town and left it into the mechanics. We did this because Brian, although having a new car, had no idea how to change a tire, and neither had the rest of us. The mechanic was shocked because when he examined the tire, he noticed that the outside was completely intact, with no puncture whatsoever. He was curious, and when he removed the outer layer of rubber, he discovered, much to his and our confusion, that the inside tubing was completely slashed to pieces, which only a knife could have done. He said it was impossible for this to happen while driving, and the only way it could have been done was if someone had taken the tire off the car, slashed the tubing, and placed it all back as it was. We all knew that we hadn't done it, but we guessed what did. My cousin Kara is lucky because she was smart and didn't mess with unknown dangers, and she does not remember anything unusual happening that day except the flat tire. I think I'll take her advice next time and stay away from Ouija boards and anything else that might put my life or sanity in danger. I think everyone else should as well. In an old Ohio farmhouse, the monks don't pray, they watch. First, it's just creaks and flickering lights. Then the sightings begin, pale robes in the dark, a faceless figure gliding down the hall. But when the black one appears in the mirror, it steps closer every time you blink. I have been raised in my current home in Ohio since birth, and I am not really sure that it has had any fatalities, other than a story, which I don't know to be true or not, of a farmer being killed on this land, and of course, the tales of Indian wars. I am from the Adena Indian region of Ohio. The house has had some odd happenings, to say the least. It started with little things like creaks in the house and soon moved up to also having lights and water faucets come on all by themselves. I also had a few bright white lights in my closet when I went through my nothing but all black clothing phase. The summer this had all started, my brother had a friend of his living with us due to some family complications he had. One night, my brother, his friend that was living with us, and I thought it would be fun to stay up and watch movies all night and just goof off. It was about 4 a.m. when I felt Matt, my brother's friend, shaking me and telling me to wake up. When I did, he asked if our house was haunted. Being he had just woken me up, I told him he was losing his marbles and went back to sleep. The next day he asked me again, and I said that I didn't think so, but we did have some odd things happen lately. He proceeded to tell me that the night before when he woke me up that he had seen a white floating monk. The monk's head was bowed and arms wrapped up in its sleeves. He had noticed that it didn't have any feet and was about 3 or 4 inches off of the ground, and it proceeded to walk up our hallway. When it reached the kitchen/living room area in which we were sleeping, it disappeared. The usual creaks and water and lights turning on went on for a while, but no one gave it any thought. The whole family would just chuckle and say, "Well, the ghost is here." This continued on for another 2 or 3 summers, and no one paid any attention to it since we were so used to it. In the summer of '93, I had 2 of my friends, we will call them Ray and Carl, stay over just to have some fun before school started back up. We all decided to go night swimming since our air conditioner was busted, and to be quite frank, it was hotter than all hell. Ray and I were headed down the stairs on the way to the pool. We stopped dead in our tracks when we noticed Carl was just standing there, mouth agape and paler than he usually is. Ray and I then headed over to see what was up. I said his name a few times and he didn't answer me, so I tapped him on his shoulder. He finally said, "What?" I asked him once again what he was doing, and he proceeded to say, "You guys didn't see that?" After a while he calmed down and finally told us what he had seen. He said he had looked into a mirror we have just to the left of the top of our stairs and saw a black monk, as described above, only black instead of white, standing just to the left and behind him. He said when he turned around to look, thinking, "It was my brother attempting to scare us, he saw nothing." Needless to say, after that we went into my room and just watched some TV, being scared out of our minds. Another odd thing that happened that summer was one night I had gotten up to use the restroom, and for some odd reason I decided to use the downstairs bathroom rather than the upstairs bathroom. The house still being without air conditioning, it was quite hot, and I remember walking down the stairs wiping sweat off of my brow. I then relieved myself and started to ascend the stairs. I was halfway up the stairs, around 8 steps up, and I all of a sudden got really cold and clammy. I remember not being able to move. This lasted for about 20 seconds. Then all of a sudden my body temp went to normal, and I ran like a racehorse to my room.